Hello, this is Tessa Kegel, and this is HBS 5 OHC Personal Assessment, Monitoring and Pre-Employment Screening, and this is Module 9, Part 2 of 3. This is the Commonwealth of Australia Copyright Act 1968, which covers the lectures for this course. So now, back to pre-employment screening. Is pre-employment screening worth doing? There are many arguments about the usefulness of pre-employment screening. So some arguments include there may be no evidence that pre-employment screening prevents disease or injury within a given work context. Pre-employment screening is a costly exercise with no proven outcome. Using pre-employment screening to decide whether a person is fit for a job may not comply with anti-discrimination legislation. Occupational conditions are not always picked up by early screening because of a long lead time. For example, occupational cancers may not show up for 20 to 50 years. There are arguments that there may be little justification for screening workers in sedentary jobs, as there are few predictors of health outcomes related to these jobs. In the mid-80s, Tyra suggested that there should not be screening for office or light assembly jobs as they were considered low risk, and at the time there were no relevant measures to measure disease risk. As the evidence base for injuries and illnesses increases, for example, in relation to musculoskeletal disorders and psychosocial conditions, this may be likely to change. Screening to investigate those at risk for the most common work-related outcome, such as low back pain, has been investigated by Waddell and Burton. In an investigation of the literature on the predictive nature of screening, they found that there was strong evidence that only one predictor is consistent with occurrence of future back pain and work loss, and that is previous history of back pain, including frequency and duration of attacks, severity, surgery, and related sickness absence. Waddell and Burton found negative relationships between back pain outcomes and personal anthropometry, flexibility, level of fitness, physical capacity matched to a job, or poor results from imaging and testing protocols. They argued that back pain is so common that at-risk people are likely to suffer irrespective of the job that they're in, and that there is no clear threshold for what constitutes a strong history of back pain or excessive job demands. Their findings indicate that a simple questionnaire on previous history of back pain would give a best prediction of future problems, and the tests undertaken at pre-employment screening have little, if any, predictive value. Based on the evidence at the time, Waddell and Burton suggest that there is insufficient evidence to reliably select individuals for particular types of work. More recent research offers a different perspective. A longitudinal study of workers conducted in the USA found that compared to a control group, there were significantly fewer injuries, considering both severity and frequency, in those who had been screened for musculoskeletal disorders compared with those who had not. While the body of evidence examining the value of pre-employment screening is still expanding, there are some arguments in favour of administering these procedures for some occupational groups. A very strong case can be put forward to workers involved in unavoidable high physical demands, such as firefighters, ambulance workers, or protective services workers, or high cognitive perceptual demands, such as air traffic controllers or armed forces personnel. Collection of baseline data, which may be used to allocate responsibility for a work-related condition, may also have some use. For example, findings of noise-induced hearing loss at pre-employment screening may later relieve an employee from responsibility for causing this condition. Ensuring adequate noise controls or a well-controlled personal protection program are in place may be a positive outcome of a discovery of a worker with hearing loss at pre-employment screening. It might be argued that specific groups may need to be screened in order to protect themselves and their clients or their colleagues,
Now, these groups might include groups such as food handlers, hospital workers, train drivers, pilots, and emergency service workers. Specific conditions which may be screened might include visual problems such as cataracts, atopy and skin conditions, skin cancer, HIV/AIDS or hepatitis B or hepatitis C, musculoskeletal conditions, or progressive diseases.
Pre-employment screening tests. Pre-employment screening tests can only be used to demonstrate whether a prospective employee can safely perform the specific tasks of the job. The following need to be considered. Is the test safe to administer? Is it reliable, i.e., is it reproducible? Does the test have content validity and validation against normative data? Does the test have adequate levels of sensitivity, specificity, and predictive values? Is it practical with regard to cost, personnel, and hardware? Does the test relate to actual job performance or utility? Pre-employment screening and Victorian legislation. The Victorian Equal Opportunity Commission states that it is not lawful to discriminate against a prospective employee if it is reasonably necessary to protect their health and safety of that or others. It states that employers should inform applicants of the reason for the pre-employment screening, what will be done with the results, and of their confidentiality. Ensure the medical assessor understands the requirements of the job, relates the tests to the job, and understands the anti-discrimination laws. Ensure medical tests are not used to screen out people who have previous injuries, previous or present workers' compensation claims, or family history of illness or disability. Ensure medical records are kept confidential. Remember that they have to modify a job where reasonable to accommodate someone with a disability. There is a range of Australian national legislation designed to prevent discrimination and support human rights in the workplace. These include the Age Discrimination Act of 2004, the Australian Human Rights Commission Act of 1986, the Racial Discrimination Act of 1975, the Sex Discrimination Act of 1984, and the Disability Discrimination Act of 1992.